Last fall, there was a squirrel in our backyard who, for some reason, picked a palm tree for its nest. Now, that palm tree, as it turned out, was a terrible choice, and every morning I'd find remnants of a partial nest splattered around the bottom of the tree trunk. I say every morning because the little guy wouldn't give up. I'd see him scurrying up the tree, his mouth stuffed with twigs, leaves, and other debris, determined to build that nest no matter how many times he failed. You know, I think the determination to rebuild and rebuild again is in all creatures. You carelessly kick aside an anthill in the crack of your sidewalk, and by the next day, it'll be back. Certainly humans have this ability to come back from disaster. I've interviewed families who had just lost everything in a flood or a tornado, and I was always amazed to hear them say, "Oh, we'll rebuild right here on this spot. This is home. We aren't going anywhere." So yes, we will come back from this terrible calamity that's brought our country and much of the world to its knees. The coronavirus has us down but not out, and we humans have proved in countless other disasters that, like the squirrel and the ant, we will not be defeated. Whenever the crisis phase ends, and that's certainly an open question, I'm sure our lives will be different than they were before the pandemic. National shocks to our systems never leave us exactly the same, and no doubt we'll settle into a new kind of normal. More awareness of our surroundings, more hand washing, maybe some new health habits that we should have been observing all along. Right now, life is inconvenient for many of us, but it's pure hell for millions who have to worry not only about the virus, but about such basics as food to eat and life-sustaining medicines. The uncertainty of not knowing how long this may last, that's affecting the mental health of children and their parents and grandparents. The only real certainty is that someday, some way, all of this will end. And like the two world wars and the Great Depression, it will be only a bad dream for those of us who lived through it, and something for future generations to read about in their history books. But what about now? What's the healthiest way to deal with a world that seems to have stopped? The self-imposed isolation. What are we to do? Well, I have a few suggestions. First, if we're fortunate enough to be confined in a home or an apartment, let's figure out how we can help those not so lucky. If we have someone to share the burden with us, a spouse, kids, roommate, let's reach out to those who, on top of everything else, are dealing with extreme loneliness. If we don't have any immediate worries about income or food, let's remember what a blessed minority we are and commit to helping some who aren't so fortunate. I was deeply touched by the story from Minnesota of people finding notes of encouragement in their mailboxes, along with a $50 bill in each envelope. Some anonymous donor, someone who decided to do what he or she could with what they had. A drop in the bucket, perhaps? Yes. But for those who benefited from that generosity, well, if you saw the report, you saw the tears of joy and gratitude. And it seemed the joy was more from the fact that somebody cared rather than the money itself. We can't mingle with friends these days, but there's FaceTime and other electronic ways that we can gather to combat the loneliness. We can send emails to those friends we think might be especially vulnerable. Ask them, how can we help? Now, maybe we can't actually help, but knowing we're there and that we're willing could make a big difference in their difficult lives right now. You know, there are so many things we've all said we'd do if only we had the time. Well, that's what we've got now. Time. Hours of not going to work, not going to school, not playing golf or tennis. So what will we do with that precious commodity, time? Surely we don't want to waste it. We can only watch so many movies, so many TV series, read so many magazines and books before we start to crave for something more. I suggest you take an inventory of your "if only I had the time" list and start investing some of these hours in actually doing it. Been wanting to write a book? Start writing it. Been wanting to organize your photos? Start organizing them. Been wanting to clean the garage or those overstuffed closets? Start cleaning. Yes, folks, we're going to come back, and I predict stronger and better as a country than we've ever been because It's challenges, hardships, difficulties, obstacles that have always made our nation great, just as these strengthen and improve us as individuals. There's not a lot I can do during this crisis to make things better. I will be donating to organizations that try to help, and I'll be calling and emailing family and friends and catching up on some of those if only I had the time projects. Maybe, just maybe, posting a few words of encouragement like these will be part of what I can do to help. I know it's not much, but it's what I can do. What can you do? What will you do?